From Shotspotter, Mark Jones, Senior Director of Customer Success at Shotspotter, retired ATF. Mark?
Well, good morning, everyone. Thank you very much for your time and your attendance at this presentation. So my title is Senior Director of Customer Success for Shotspotter, and what that means is that I travel to all of our customers once they've acquired our service and help them get an understanding of what successful customers are doing in other parts of the country to help them get off the ground. So what does ShotSpotter do? We very precisely detect gunfire and locate it. We then direct police agencies to go immediately to the dot where we put a lat long on the map and show you exactly where gunfire is occurring, so there's no longer a mystery, thus protecting your officers, giving them tactical awareness of the streets that they're patrolling. And we also connect them to their communities. There are some mechanisms that we offer to have community engagement once the crime scenes are secure and safe. What ShotSpotter does also is, if your patrol officers, your patrol elements show up on a crime scene that we've told you to go to, and there's no shooter standing there, which is often the case, we show you exactly where the evidence is, where to find shell casings, where to stop and get the things that are going to connect the crime scenes through the National Integrated Ballistics Information Network. So with that, I'm going to turn this over to my colleague from the New Jersey State Police to talk about the ballistics imaging, and then we're going to bring this all back together on how the three technologies can really be multiply each other and help you reduce gun violence in your affected communities.
Good afternoon, my name is Jeff Noble. I'm with the New Jersey State Police, currently assigned as the commanding officer of the Forensic Investigations Office. 2 years ago, we've been utilizing NIBIN for a long time in New Jersey. Up until 2 years ago, we had NIBIN placed at the back end of our process flow within our lab, which basically meant that our civilian agencies, when they gave us their shell casings or their crime guns, they would get a NIBIN hit on average 10 months plus. And I can speak on behalf of the investigators out there, because that's the world that I came from. That was simply unacceptable for us. One of the common themes you're going to hear throughout this presentation is the timeliness. We realized in New Jersey that this information, this data, collectively, whether it's from ShotSpotter, whether it's from NIBIN, or one of the other technology platforms that we hear about today, we need this information quickly. We need, more importantly, to get it in the hands of the right folks, which are the detectives and the investigators handling these crimes. Because we realize, although it's great to get a NIBIN report 10 months later after a crime, and that might help us once we go to court, certainly helps a case. How many crimes occurred in that 10 months while we waited for that information? How many other shootings, how many other victims are out there that we could have prevented had we had that information much sooner? So in New Jersey, we turned around our whole process flow. We put NIBIN at the front end of it, and currently we are using NIBIN as an intelligence-driven tool to really prevent the next shooting. So if a crime gun comes into the state police lab in New Jersey, we're turning it around, we're giving out NIBIN leads generally on average within that first 24 hours. We're putting the power of that data in the hands of the detectives, and the goal, the prevention piece, is just so important. And I can sit here for a long time, and I'd be happy to talk to anybody that would like to know success stories. I can tell you that we have enough success stories to really prove that we are preventing crime because of getting this information, utilizing NIBIN tactically rather than as an extra report that goes in the file. The other thing that we're doing is we're putting this data in a central spot, which I'm going to pass over to my friend Rocky from GunOps here in a moment. But for us, we are using GunOps as our sort of central storage location for all this data, making it accessible so that the folks can use it tactically. And with that, I'll turn it over to Rocky from GunOps.
Thank you. I'm Rocky Edwards. Give you a little background on me. I'm a retired special agent with the Army CID. I was trained by the United States Army in forensic firearms identification and worked with LAPD, Santa Ana PD, and now I'm a consultant for Stockton PD. I'm also chairman of GunOps and the creator of GunOps. And I've been working with the NIBIN program since its inception back in 2000, and I've worked with the systems, and I'm starting to see something that needed to be done in order to improve the way the system worked. And so what was missing was the criminal intelligence aspects of NIDM, was accessible by the detectives and by the people using the system. And being able to, and I also saw a need for prioritization of shooting cases. I was working a series of shootings of which 38 was used, and there were about 17 shootings which I was linking to each other, including 4 homicides, a bunch of assaults. And so I was using a pin map back in 2005, and I was like, there's got to be a better way. This is the age of technology. And so what I did was I created a system that handles big data. It's a patent pending system in which it takes, there's no limit to the amount of data that it can handle, and gives to the detectives at their fingertips the ability from a crime scene or wherever they are to assess information regarding a shooting incident. It's highly secure, and it's a very, very fast system. It's currently it was studied by professors from Sam Houston State University, Bill King, as well as Bill Wells, and also by Professor Ed McGuire from American University. And they had the opportunity to work with the system, see it, and also wrote white papers on it, which are available on the website. So currently, GunOps is being used in Santa Ana, California, Stockton, California, which is the second most violent city in California, as well as South Bend, Indiana, and through the state police in New Jersey, which Major Noble is one of the spearheaders of that. We've had great success stories with NIDM. South Bend is a prime example of who's using it, and so is New Jersey. And if you have questions, people there would be glad, I'm sure, to discuss it with you. So that being said, GunOps is something that can be assessed from your computer, your handheld device, which is your iPad, iPhone, cell phone, and what it does is on a secure CGIS compliant cloud, which gives you a secure platform to work with. Also, it's currently being tested by the ATF in Miami, Chicago, Louisville, Kentucky, Seattle, Washington, D.C., and I know I'm missing one, but they are also testing it extensively. So between the 3 systems, what I saw and what I worked with in Stockton, California, and Santa Ana, and what I see in New Jersey and in South Bend, Indiana, is this trifecta that Pete Gagliardi has written a white paper on, which shows that from the time of the shooting incident, through the NIDM process, and through adjudication, GunOps acts as a bridge between these technologies and gives the user immediate capabilities as far as looking at the system, seeing what's been worked, what's pending, and the unique thing about GunOps is it gives you the ability to see what's pending and prioritize your workload, making you more effective in the case of what you're doing. Thank you, Pete.
Mark, maybe you could shed some light on the some of the research that you've done on the reporting of firearm-related crimes to the police.
Absolutely, thank you, Pete. So you might ask yourself, well, why would I want Shotspotter when I've got a community full of people with a phone that can call 911? And the answer is very simple. Through research, and we've got scholarly research to back this up, this isn't just a company research. We know that only between 10 and 20% of gunfire in any given location is reported via 911. There's really good research on this, and what it really means is, as a police chief, if you're getting only 10% or even 20% of your gunfire via 911, it means you're 80% blind to what's going on in your communities. With our technology, we put very precise, very accurate gunfire detection and location technology into the hands of your patrol officers, on the mobile display terminal in their squad car, on your smartphone, on your tablet, in your helicopter, wherever you want us to put it there, we'll put it there. And we'll give you gunfire alerts and let you know when gunfire is happening within 60 seconds of the first shot breaking in your community. Imagine, if you will, if any of you have ever been a patrol officer, and I know many of you have, you've answered 911 calls for shots fired. And what's your process? You think about the aimless process that you've got the address. So you show up at the address eventually and knock on the door. But you're not going to where the gunfire is, because the people that call 911 over gunfire don't know where the gunfire is. They just know they've heard some impulsive noise. We not only guarantee that we're sending you to gunfire, but we send you exactly where you're supposed to be. This gives you tactical awareness. So if you've got a multiple shooter incident where people are having a shootout, we're telling you where your cops don't want to drive. Like, don't drive through the middle of the shootout, take a position on this corner, and then tactically approach. We offer officer safety. We offer the ability to find shooters in the act sometimes, and always we offer the ability to find evidence on a crime scene. And we advocate, along with our partners, comprehensive collection of all shell casings, whether it's what we call a stop sign shooting, where you get a shot breaks and you show up and there's a hole in the stop sign. You pick up those casings, because picking those up ties them to other crime scenes, and you may very well stop a murder before it happens. And I think all of us would agree it's much better to prevent a homicide than it is to pick up the pieces and catch the guy who did the shooting.
Jeff, you spent many years as a detective in major crime squad for New Jersey State Police before you became the commander of the Office of Forensic Sciences. Maybe you could enlighten us a bit, as a detective back in the day, how important it was to get this kind of data from every firearms incident.
So clearly one of the things that I can speak to, at least in New Jersey, I'm sure it's elsewhere, our gun crime is not limited to one town or one jurisdiction. These shooters in New Jersey, they travel. It's generally the same bad guy, bad gal, or group of bad guys or bad gals, and they're traveling to different towns, different counties within New Jersey. And you could have a detectives in town A that are really doing a great job, getting their forensics in, proper collection, really being super aggressive with every gun crime. But they're only going to be effective if the detectives in town B, next door to them, are doing the same thing. And across the board, as a detective, I certainly shared the frustration amongst many other detectives when you would do your part, and then there was a link to another agency, another jurisdiction, and maybe they weren't having the same priorities as we were, or just different philosophies. And there was this breakdown where sometimes we would miss opportunities, and I think that's part of the message that we are really engaged in right now in New Jersey, is the outreach, so that you mentioned that stop sign shooting. So if your agency has a stop sign shooting, right, there's no victims, someone, presumably kids, right, we're shooting at stop signs. But if those shell casings aren't collected properly, entered into NIBIN quickly, then we're missing something. We're missing the opportunity maybe in the other town, because that stop sign shooting could have been target practice for the gangbangers who were gearing up to do the drive-by, which killed 4 people the following night. And those shell casings at the stop sign in that town, 5 towns away, are the key piece that we need. So how do we bring that together? Pete, that's where we're at right now in New Jersey, is really working hard, right? And we've come a long way. That I can speak confidently that in New Jersey, whether it's a town police department, big city, county, or the state police, we are on the same page collectively.
So just to recap and put us at a point on the timeline, if we look at the sphere of firearm investigation, and we break it into 3 pieces, into thirds. We've talked about the response to the incident and the collection of data and how important that is. Now we're in the second third, where we're looking to extract information. We're looking to analyze forensic data to assist and advance the investigation. So maybe Rocky, if you could tell us how GunOps helps utilize the data that's initially been collected, extract more clues and information from it, and then we'll talk about how we feed it back to the investigators in the last third of the sphere, which is to identify, pursue, and apprehend the violators.
As a famous person said once, every firearm or every gun tells a story. Steve said that. The way I've used GunOps is the prioritization capabilities of it and the hunt features on it, which is search, seek, hunt, gives us the ability to go out and seek and look at other cases that are not yet worked and help tie them together to an investigation in order to give us results and help us solve that crime. A perfect example is in Santa Ana. I was working a homicide for a security guard who was shot in the head with a 10 millimeter. One shot fired, one bullet, and one cartridge case. No video, no witnesses. Absolutely no leads whatsoever. They brought the evidence from the lab, we looked at it, and ran it through GunOps and found another shooting 6 months prior that was 10 millimeter, drive-by shooting on a bicycle. Of course it is Santa Ana, California, and they ride bicycles a lot and they shoot a lot from those bicycles. So they collected the cartridge case, and I was able to look at that evidence, compare it, and determine that the homicide and that drive-by on the bicycle was from the same firearm. Now, what happened was, I put the information out to the patrol units and the detectives, informing them that the only lead we have is somebody riding a red beach-strap bicycle wearing a white hoodie. About a week later, 2 blocks away from the homicide, officers saw a group of kids riding bicycles. So they stopped to do kind of like a field interview, kind of chat with them. And when they stopped them, one of the kids took a pistol and threw it into the bushes. Turned out to be a 10 millimeter Delta lead. So immediately they bring the kid in, they bring me the pistol. After the process, I test fire it. I ID it to the homicide, I ID it to the drive-by shooting on the bicycle. And before the detectives ever go in and interview this kid, they know that that pistol was used in that homicide. And there's case after case after case where we've had successes with the criminal intelligence and GunOps, and also from working with the NIBIN system, that they were putting that, prioritizing our workload into NIBIN and getting success stories, even from detectives working on the streets and in the field. Another aspect of GunOps is South Bend, Indiana is not just using it for firearm-related crimes, but they're also taking crime scene photos and uploading some of those photos into the icon of GunOps and give those detectives a good platform to work with from the crime scene.
So let's do a little more rubber meets the road here, and I'm going to throw this out to any one of you because I know I'm blindsiding you all right now with this request. But anybody weigh in on a rubber meets the road success story on any of these technologies to show how they leverage each other? And somebody volunteer, and then the other two have a few seconds to pick it up. And I know Jeff's probably got one right off the top of his head.
So I can speak to that, Pete. This is a recent case, so I have to obviously keep the names of the particulars general. But essentially, our homicide unit went out to a case very recently where there was a dead body in a car. The suspect was full of holes. And while the detectives were at the scene, we ran the suspect's name through GunOps. I'm sorry, the victim's name through GunOps. And right while the detectives were at the scene, before the crime scene had even processed the vehicle, and while the victim was still in the car, we learned that through GunOps that the decedent was a suspect in a shooting, which was a home invasion, from 3 counties away. And he was just listed as a suspect. It wasn't something that would have popped in a traditional intel report. It wouldn't have come up through CCH because he hadn't been charged. It was a piece of data that had come in that we had collected through GunOps. And very quickly, the detectives contacted that PD and learned that our dead guy in the car was a suspect in a home invasion where he had robbed a bunch of drug dealers 3 weeks prior. So clearly we figured out pretty quickly at the scene why this gentleman most likely was there, full of holes. And the key with that, though, is the collaboration. While we were at the scene, our homicide guys started working collaboratively with the detectives from the other PD, because they had the home invasion. They had a lot of intel on the background of why this guy was likely shot. And the best part about it, from my view, as a commander, was that our detectives synced up with the other agency right away and started working the case together. And very quickly we were able to not only make those connections, but make the arrest and get the offenders off the streets before they could shoot again. And it was the timeliness of that information that we really wouldn't have had, Pete, without this type of collective viewpoint.
Mark, want to throw one out?
Absolutely. And rather than tell a specific success story about a specific city, I'd just like to relate in general that it's very important that you all understand how difficult it is to get citizens to report gunfire via 911. One of the primary facets for using ShotSpotter Flex in your community is to truly understand the scope of gunfire in the community that you live in the neighborhoods that are affected by this gunfire. There are a raft of problems that come from being exposed to gunfire, everything from ongoing traumatic stress in children and to just communities that are debilitated by the fact that there's so much violence that they become inured to it and won't call 911 because they don't think they're going to get a response. They don't think anything is ever going to be different. And so when we're talking to our customer agencies, like for instance, in Denver, when we first went live in Denver at the beginning of 2015, we do what's called we call it a DQV. It's a live fire test to validate and calibrate our system. And the first Denver DQV that we did, the chief of the agency was standing by waiting for 911 calls because we're doing it as in public parks and things like that. It's very well controlled, but it's, they make news announcements. Not a single 911 call, and our DQV is typically 18 to 25 rounds fired in different cadences and whatnot. So the chief was very disappointed that no one had called 911, and he approached a home and knocked on the door, and a woman answered the door. And he asked her, "Did you hear the gunshots?" And I'm truncating the story quite a bit. "Did you hear the gunfire?" And she said, "Oh yes, chief, I heard the gunfire." And he said, "Well, why didn't you call 911? And she said, "Well, we had to follow our protocol, which involved her taking her grandchildren down into the basement and staying low for a half an hour before she felt that she was safe enough to come out upstairs." We are eliminating those problems. We're helping agencies understand where their gunfire is and what occurs over time. We've seen this in South Bend, for instance. The chief has told us that their 911 calls in the coverage area are up something like 160% from a place that never called 911 before. And if you take one thing away from this about us, is ShotSpotter is going to tie you back to your community, the community that you may be really struggling to have good relations with. We're going to provide you with opportunities to get in there and meet your citizens and have meaningful conversations and increase the reporting and the engagement of those citizens.
Rocky, Stockton PD, they've had a study done on the use of these technologies and how they leverage each other. Maybe you could talk to us about some of the metrics from that study?
Sure. One thing about GunOps, it deals with forensic facts. So when I look at a firearm, I'm saying that this firearm was used in this shooting, or these parts cases were from the same firearm. The way the workflow is Stockton Police Department the information comes in, is prioritized, entered through the IDOS system and the NIBIN program. Potential links are found, and that information is put together and connected through forensic analysis. There are expedited processes which we've developed that makes it to where we can be much more effective and do things much quicker. And Stockton, California, in the first 13 years of the NIBIN program, they had 350 what we call hits, linking from one shooting to another. I've been in Stockton PD for 3 years. We've had over almost 500 hits, confirmed hits, in that 3 years versus the 13 years prior to that. Also the same type of success as with the Santa Ana Police Department, where we had 170 hits in the first 5 years from 2000 to 2005. And from that point forward, we have 1,200 hits from 2005 to present. So it helps to expedite and helps to prioritize your workload. The most important thing of this is those forensic facts are then fed to the crime analysts, and those crime analysts then take that information and do their magic, doing the social networking, doing the things that they do to put the whole picture together for the detectives, so they're much more effective in fighting crime and stalking. So that's how this all works together. GunOps is working with forensic facts and also working with Doris Cohen from Shotspotter, who comes out to Stockton, California periodically. Works with me and helping put together stuff to show how the effectiveness of Shotspotter and how it connects to shootings not only in the Shotspotter area, but outside of that area, painting a whole picture of, if we didn't have the calls coming in on Shotspotter, then we may not have those connecting shootings connecting to the outside areas, painting the picture of what this AK-47 is doing, for example. We're tracking the AK-47, used in 9 shootings so far in Stockton. We don't have the firearm yet, but we're sure looking for it. So that's kind of how it's done in Stockton.
I'd like to open it up for questions. If anyone has a question about anything they've heard, there's a microphone right here. We invite you to step up, or maybe we could bring the microphone back to you. Someone surely has a question. Sure, yeah.
Thank you, Pete. Bill Booth with Business Group. And Mark, I want to ask you a question. I thought that what you said was really interesting, and maybe I missed the reason. You were test firing your system in Denver. No one called 911. After the system was employed, you said that the 911 calls actually went up, and you attributed that to Shotspotter. What's the logic there? Why did the 911 calls go up? Did the people know they had Shotspotter, and what's the connection between those two?
That's a great question, thank you. What occurs in communities that have been debilitated by the constant exposure to gunfire is they've lost confidence that they're going to get a police response for a variety of reasons. Once they start seeing police, remember, the police only recognize that there's maybe 20% of the gunfire that's occurring there is actually occurring because they don't know about it. We alert them to the fact that there's gunfire so that they're responding on a regular basis. Now citizens that never saw police respond to gunfire that they didn't know about, now the cops know about it, they're showing up. The citizens are now starting to think, and I'm projecting a little bit onto the citizenry of America, but they're basically looking at it and saying, wow, the police are coming for gunfire that I heard and I didn't even call. We don't know the mechanism for this, we don't know the exact psychological mechanism, but I can tell you that our communities are, in many of them, are experiencing increases in 911 calls in communities that never called before. And the only real change in variable is the fact that they've installed ShotSpotter Flex and put a program into place to respond to gunfire, collect evidence, link crime scenes, and prevent additional gunfire by catching people, either catching them in the act or getting them after they've linked a few crime scenes together. So we're seeing them, and our customer chiefs are seeing increases in 911 calls from citizenry who were previously unwilling to do so. And does that answer your question?
Know that you're going to respond when they call. Previously, they would, why even bother calling? The cops aren't going to come anyway.
That's correct. It's because they have to start. They're learning that they can expect a police response to a gunfire, whether they call or not, and they're becoming more engaged. This is all tied as well to community relations efforts on the parts of the police chiefs and the police departments to get in there and have conversations. For instance, following a shooting, once the scene is secure. If there's a body, the body is picked up. If there's evidence to be collected, the evidence is collected. Officers then go canvass door to door in the area close to the shooting and ask the citizens, good evening, sir, there was a shooting outside your home. Did you hear anything? Is everybody in your house okay? You have children? Would they benefit from having a conversation with a police officer to feel safer? Things like that kind of an effort. If they're not home, maybe the agency utilizes a door hanger that allows them to have information about who they can contact about the shooting later, to give information because perhaps they don't want to talk to the police right there when all their neighbors are watching, or it's 2 in the morning and they're too tired, or whatever that happens to be. But we're seeing that this sort of community engagement effort is very effective in many of the communities that we're in that are adopting these best practices. And the best practices are promulgated by successful agencies that have tried them. At South Bend, Indiana, for instance, the former chief there will tell you, he had previously implemented ShotSpotter in one city that he was the chief in, moved to South Bend, became the chief, implemented ShotSpotter. He got the implementation guidelines from his street crime unit, not from it didn't come out of his head top down, it came up from his guys who said, Chief, what if we do this and what if we do that? And how about if we do these things? And he was a progressive leader and adopted their suggestions, and they have an extremely successful program in South Bend. In full disclosure, that chief now works for ShotSpotter as one of our sales directors. So does that answer your question?
So I started my law enforcement career in 1969 in New Haven, Connecticut, and the reason I say that is I see some former colleagues sitting in the audience, and I'd like to pose the question. Of course, I know the answer, but are you guys using any of the technologies that we've been talking about today, Arch?
Yeah, we are.
Arch, I think you got to come to the mic. Don't worry, you can get me back to you.
Yes, we are, and you know, we've recently expanded our Shotspotter coverage by threefold. We have a very robust NIBIN program going on, and there's a lot of advantages that we've found. Okay, so one of the things that Shotspotter has done for us is pinpointing exactly where the gunfire is coming from. So even when an officer is responding, so we get a 911 call that there was a shots fired at 22 Main Street. Okay, we go to 22 Main Street. We don't see any evidence. We knock on the door, talk to the resident, and the resident says, "Yeah, I heard 6 shots." But that's where the information ends. With ShotSpotter, we find out that actually it wasn't at 22 Main Street that the shots were fired at, but the street right behind 22 Main Street. And we send our officers to that location, and we pick up 6 spent shell cases, which we then throw into NIBIN. So it's really expanded our evidence collection, and to expand on what you were talking about, the benefits in the community. And I've talked about this in the past. So when there are a lot of times that shots fired aren't reported, aren't called in. But when the community sees us responding to those, okay, without a call, okay, and then our district managers follow up the next day and knock on the door and say, you know, there were shots fired in your area. Do you want us to have someone from the Yale Child Studies to come and speak to your children because they were traumatized by this? It has an effect on the community, okay? And then the community's more apt to cooperate with, or at least more apt to get on the phone and call when they see something of that nature happening outside. So there are a lot of benefits in using ShotSpotter. Our NIBIN program is a very robust one. ATF came in at our behest and revamped the state of Connecticut's NIBIN program. Okay, the one thing that ATF did, the biggest, and Pete will tell you this, their biggest change was they took NIBIN out of their analysis group and put it into investigations. Okay, when they did that, okay, they changed the nature of NIBIN for everybody. Okay, so what NIBIN became then was an investigative tool, not an evidence enhancer, but an investigative tool for local police departments. We currently have a very robust NIBIN program. We've made several arrests for shootings and shots fired complaints